right, it's Brian Ponder, Brian the Credit Lawyer. Today we're going to talk about how to make debt collectors pay you. Most of you know what debt collectors do or who they are, but for those that don't, debt collectors are companies who attempt to collect a debt on behalf of another creditor. Also, debt collectors include investors or debt buyers who buy defaulted debt and try to collect on it. So those are two types of entities that are debt collectors. What's special about debt collectors is they are governed by the FDCPA, which stands for Fair Debt Collections Practices Act, and that is a special law designed to protect consumers against unlawful practices that debt collectors may engage in. So, what does that mean to you? Well, if you have debts that end up in the hands of debt collectors, they're going to try to contact you about paying that debt. They're also likely going to place that debt on your consumer report or credit report. When trying to collect that debt and contacting you, they have to follow the law. And that includes when they report alleged debts to consumer reporting agencies where it ends up on your credit. Any part of that process that's done incorrectly is a violation of the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. Now, there are many things that can violate it, but today we're going to focus on the fact that if there is a violation, then that debt collector under the FDCPA law can be held liable to you for your damages, attorney's fees, costs, and fees related to pursuing that violation. That's how they can pay you. Now, debt collections usually come about when you have various types of debt that just go unpaid. That's called defaulted debt. That may be medical debt, maybe credit card debt, maybe a loan. It could be any assortment of consumer debt that can go defaulted. Now, the company that is originally owed, that company is called the original creditor. That original creditor will hire a debt collector to try to collect that debt. And as I mentioned earlier, there are some instances where that original creditor can actually sell that debt, which is a receivable to them. That's a term used to describe money owed to a company. They can sell that debt to a debt buyer. One of the most popular types of defaulted debt that are sold is credit card debt. So if a credit card goes unpaid for a long period of time, well, that credit card company will close that card, and eventually they will do what's called a charge-off. A charge-off is really just an accounting principle where they deem that that debt is not going to be paid, so they take a tax write-off as a loss. Unlike what most people say online, that does not mean you don't have to pay that debt. It's only a tax method that a company uses to save on taxes, when in fact they can still collect on that debt. But the point is, after a charge-off, sometimes these credit card companies, or after a default or charge-off, these companies will sell that debt for pennies on the dollar. And the reason they do that is because they don't believe they're going to get paid anything. So they'll just sell the debt. They take the tax favorable consequence, and then they'll sell that debt for pennies on the dollar to a debt buyer. One of the major debt buyers may include Midland Funding, Portfolio Recovery Associates, and there are many other debt buyers. Those are the big ones. There are small ones. I mean, even you could go and buy some defaulted credit card debt if you wanted to. All right, so when they buy that debt, they're a debt buyer, but they're still a debt collector. And so the reason I mention that is because many times when it comes to credit card debt, when it gets into the hands of a debt collector, many times that debt has been sold to a debt buyer. And sometimes it may be the same debt collector who bought it who is attempting to collect it to you. And sometimes a debt buyer will hire another debt collector to collect on that debt that was bought. You see that a lot with LVNV Funding and Resurgent. That's a group of companies that one buys, one collects, but they're both debt collectors. Also, Midland Funding, Midland Credit Management, family of companies where one buys the debt, one collects the debt. However, they're both debt collectors under the FDCPA, okay? You follow me? And so when they try to collect that debt from you, you have to look for certain things that they can do wrong. For example, they can't call you an annoying number of times. They can't call you before and after certain hours of the day. They can't call you at work if you say it's inconvenient and that you can't take calls at work. They can't call you if you tell them not to call you. They can't contact you if you tell them that you refuse to pay the debt. They can't contact you and try to collect on it if you say you don't want to be contacted. Also, they can't call you if you tell them you don't want to be called. They can't email you if you tell them that you don't want to be emailed. You have to make that request in writing. But there are many things that they cannot do. Some things automatically and some things by request. The contact items not to be contacted at all is something you have to request. The can't call early morning or late at night is something that statutorily is already written as an inconvenient time. So also, they can't try to collect $120 from you when you only legally owed $100. That's trying to collect the wrong amount. They cannot add fees or penalties to the underlying debt when the underlying debt agreement does not provide for that to be done. Okay? So there are many, many nuances that protect the consumer when it comes to debt collection. And when the debt collector violates that, that is something that you, as a consumer, as an individual, can use as leverage to stop the harassment and collection of that debt and recover money, make the debt collector pay you. Now, here's something that's even better. The reason I spent a lot of time describing how a lot of times debts are sold by the original creditor to a debt buyer, and these debt buyers are debt collectors as well. When you catch a debt collector who's a debt buyer in an FDCPA violation and you call them out on it, many times you can eliminate that debt, because as a condition of you forgiving or foregoing your claim against them for violating the FDCPA, they will agree to forever cease and desist attempting to collect that debt from you. What does that mean? Well, that credit card debt, whether it be $20,000, $40,000, $50,000, is now going to be deleted from your credit report and is not going to be collected on because the debt collector was caught in a violation and they agreed, instead of you suing them or risking being sued by you, they agree to not collect on that debt. And that's a way to eliminate debt. So if you have a debt that's been purchased by a debt buyer, you catch them in a violation, you may be able to eliminate that debt.